Hi guys, I'm Woodcraft Hamster and welcome back to my beginner's guide to wood carving series. Now this is going to be our last episode and I thought I'd finish us off with another little carve along and one that I suspect most of you are quite keen to try out, and that is carving a spoon. Now I've just got a little off-cut green branch here. And what I'm going to show you today is something I've done already on my channel, I think not that long ago, which is carving a spoon without the need for a spoon knife. Now I figured that was quite apt for this particular series because, you know, I've been saying all along you don't need to rush out and buy loads of tools. You know, a good knife and an axe. I mean, you can do it without the axe, to be perfectly honest, but I figure seeing as I've got one here and seeing as we've not used one before on these little projects, I figured I'd show you it as well. So what I think I'll do, I'll move the camera a bit closer in and we'll make a start. Right, so here is the piece of wood that I'm going to be using. It's just a little random off-cut branch. It's still relatively green that I pulled out of my wood pile. Now you'll see it's got a relatively round cross section, which is fine. And what I'm going to do, just using one of my carving knives, I'm going to start off probably, where are we? I don't know, probably about 6 inches in, something like that, and just start taking very small cuts using a chest lever grip or whatever's most comfortable for you. And what we're trying to do is hollow out a little bit of a depression that's going to become the bowl of your spoon. Now personally I like to get these in at the beginning of carving a spoon. That's just my personal preference. I know a lot of carvers who like to do it this way. I know quite a lot of carvers who also like to do it the other way around and kind of rough the spoon out first and then put the bowl in. And again, like so many other type of things with carving, it's all really just personal preference. Now you can come back towards yourself. I've shown you this this type of cutting before. You get it up against your chest, you've got a nice long distance between you and the knife. Keep your elbow of your knife hand locked into your side, and it then becomes very difficult for that knife to get even anywhere close to me. Now this particular wood is very young birch. It doesn't like carving as well as more mature birch, I find. It's still perfectly carvable, but I do find it quite tough in comparison. And then for your fine details you can get up there, a little bit of a thumb push just to get some of those little detail bits done. But generally speaking, this is what we're aiming for, a little bit of a depression in here, and that's going to become the bowl of your spoon. And as I say, you don't need a spoon knife for this. Sometimes it can be helpful, but for this style of spoon that I'm going for, you definitely don't need it. So we've now got our bowl roughly set in, and to be honest, apart from maybe a little bit of tidying up once it's dried, that is pretty much it. Nice and simple, no messing around with a spoon knife. And what I'm going to move over to now is my axe, and what we want to do is where the bowl comes in down here, we want to smooth down here and remove all this waste material and a little bit up here, and then make a start on the handle. Now I'm going to skip through most of this footage because it's pretty repetitive, but what I was going to say before I do is that when it comes to axe work, and I realise I've not spoken much about this in this series, it does take a little while to get used to using an axe, to make sure that you are accurate and, more importantly, confident when you're using an axe. You don't want to be kind of just, you know, tapping away at it like this, you know, taking off tiny little pieces, but in the same breath you don't want to be really going at it because then you lose your accuracy. So I tend to go for kind of cuts more like this, you know, I'm taking off relatively small pieces. Certainly of something like this, you know, I may take off a little bit larger, but this is about what I want to be taking away. That way I'm making sure that I'm still accurate whilst being in control of my axe. Now the other thing to mention here, what was I going to say? I mean, essentially, you know, when you're using an axe, you just need to be a little bit careful. You know, you need to make sure you've got a good chopping block or something underneath you that's not going to damage your axe, obviously. And the same as you know, the last little project we did with the chess pawn. What I tend to do is work my way round as I'm carving, so I won't focus just on this area here and do loads of work on this side. What I'll do is I'll do a couple of cuts here, and then I'll move round to the other side. And essentially for something like a spoon, what you're trying to do is keep it nice and even all the way round. Now, something else you can do when you're using your axe is what's known as a planing cut, and essentially you just put your blade against the piece of work and you can kind of use it almost like a plane. That will help you smooth down certain lines. You know, if you've got a little bit of a split where something's come off a little bit differently to the way you envisaged, you can just smooth it down, get everything nice and even, and then carry on. Now, so far, we've sort of smoothed out the back of the head. I'll do a bit more work on this in a minute. But what I now want to do is start bringing where the top of the spoon is going to meet the handle. I want to start carving this round this side and this side, just to thin this side down a little bit. So there we go guys, a few minutes work and we've now got something that's much more resembling a spoon. I'm just going to move the camera around a little bit. I'm also going to just very quickly cut this handle down because I don't quite want it this long. Probably take about a third off the end and we'll come back and do a bit more knife work. Right, so I've shortened that handle down a little bit to where I want it to be, and at this stage, this is where most of you as beginner wood carvers are going to have a decision to make. Firstly, and I should have mentioned this a second ago, is when do you stop using your axe? Now for me, this is probably about the right thickness, certainly for when I'm carving, maybe slightly thinner, but what you want to do is don't try and overdo it with your axe. Yes, it will mean you have to do a little bit more work with your knife, which can take a little bit longer, but you don't want to overdo it because it's much easier to sort of ruin a spoon with an axe than it is with your knife. Now you can see here we've got the spoon bowl set in, we've got a little bit of a taper coming up here underneath, and essentially all we're going to be doing now is refining this down with our knife. If I bring it onto the other side here, what I want to be doing is where the bulge joins the handle, I want to bring this into a bit more of a sort of a flowing curve on both sides, and then on the back I just want this curve to be sort of a little bit more flowing as well, and I just need to tidy up the back of the spoon bowl, thin things down a little bit, and that's really all I'm going to be doing. Now as a beginner carver, what I would normally recommend is if you take where you're just above where your bowl is going to stop on the back side here and just run a line with a pencil across it. I tend to do it by eye nowadays, but it does really help to give you something to focus against. And then what I'll do, starting on one side, and I'll kind of have this up against my chest as I've shown you before, arm locked in. So I'll take from my line, which is going to be say here, and I'll take one cut down the handle. I'll then turn it over, find that line again, and make another cut on the corresponding side, and then I will start working my way from one side to the other across the back. Now what this is doing is thinning everything down as we go and keeping it nice and even. And really, you know, if you want your spoon to look sort of even halfway nice, that's the way of keeping it nice and even, nice and together, so you don't have one side that's massively out of kilter with the other. Now you will find sometimes things will get a little bit stuck, especially when you're working towards the thicker end down the bottom. It's not a huge problem. You come on down like this, and when it starts to jam up, just turn yourself round into a chest lever grip and just take off that last little piece. Now that's getting relatively thin, sort of where I want it to be. Now you can come back here and start some push cuts with your thumb just to smooth things down a little bit. Likewise, you don't want to forget about the back of your bowl as well, so you want to make sure that you thin that down a reasonable amount. And again, I find push cuts with the back of my thumb best thing for that. And what you'll see is we've got quite a thick edge along here, and what I want to do is gradually work this down so that it starts to sort of smooth itself round, so you just got a nice sort of rounded side, if you like, for when you're putting this in your mouth, because obviously you don't want a spoon that's going to be uncomfortable to eat with. So this is how we're getting on. We're not looking too bad. We've thinned down the spoon, and what you'll notice is you often get this kind of ridge up the top here. Some people like to keep it. I'm not a huge fan, to be honest, and there are several ways you can get rid of it. I tend to work coming across, because it takes off quite a lot of material quite quickly. You need to be a little bit careful with it, and then coming back across the other way, and it just sort of helps it to blend in really to the other parts of the spoon. Now that's the first part of it, and again we can tidy this up a little bit more later, but then also what you want to do is take these corners off. I'll give you a bit of a close-up. Hopefully that's picking up all right on the camera. So you've got this corner here, and you just want to kind of smooth it down just so it joins in to the rest of the spoon. So really guys, and so to note, I've got another miscellaneous carving injury. First one of those I've had for a little while. And really now all we're looking to do is tidy up the spoon handle. So again, all you want to do is just remove any of this sort of rough and jagged material, and one of the things I've always found really useful here is, and I know it sounds a little bit of a cliche, but the wood will generally tell you the way it wants to go. So if you're carving in one direction like I am, and the wood is carving nicely, that's absolutely fine. If you find it starting to jam up and it's trying to split, generally speaking, if you reverse your knife blade and start going in the opposite direction, or at least in a different direction, that usually helps quite a lot. So there you go guys, that is pretty much our finished spoon. Now obviously it's still green, which means it's still got quite a lot of moisture in it. Let me see if I can show that a bit better on the camera. But you know, we've got a nice thin spoon bowl here, certainly enough for picking stuff up out of a bowl or for coffee or what have you. You know, it's a no frills spoon. It's a pretty basic handle. You know, you could do a lot more work on this. You could chamfer off all your edges. You could do a little bit of chip carving or something like that in there, or a bit of engraving. But you know, all in all, for the, I don't know, maybe half an hour that this video is taken, it's very, very simple just to carve a simple basic spoon. Right then guys, well that is it for today. As I said, this was meant to just be a really simple, easy, quick spoon to do with a couple of basic tools just to get you carving and get you going. You know, you can obviously do a lot more with these. You can spend a bit more time with them. You can do some really fine detail if you want to. You can chamfer off your edges. You can kind of put, you know, a few little embellishments on there. You can do some engraving or coal rossing. But you know, this is the kind of thing that I will generally use if I'm out and about doing some bushcraft, and I'll make something like this out in the field if I want to make some lunch, make a coffee, do some cooking, that kind of thing. And 9 times out of 10 it will end up going on the fire at the end of the day, and I'll make a new one when I go out. This one is destined to be dried out and finished. So for those of you that are following along with this at home, this is going to go into a plastic bag with a few handfuls of the fresh wood shavings that we've made by making this today. It will stay in there for a couple of weeks, slowly, gradually drying out, and I'll change the bag over kind of once a week, something like that, just to help it dry out slowly. If I was to take this indoors with me and put it into a warm place, the moisture that's inside will escape too quickly and the whole thing will just split. So just a little tip from me, keep it inside a plastic bag, a box or something like that with some fresh shavings and just a small air gap, just to help slow down that drying process. So anyway guys, I hope today's been useful. I hope you've enjoyed this series. If there's anything else you'd like to see me do, or any tips or tricks you'd like me to kind of give you, please do let me know in the comments. I'm more than happy to sort of make this content you know, specifically for things you want to see. That's what it's all about at the end of the day. Click like and subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I hope you'll all join me next time. Cheers guys.